So this is our regular meeting for January 27th, 2021. And we're running a little behind, folks. Sorry, we've had some setup to do. But going to call the meeting to order at 5:37. And first question is, are there any adjustments to the agenda?
No.
Okay, so good. That's a good start.
So making a motion to approve the minutes
Second the motion?
of January 5th, 13th, and 20th,
Oh, except I
2021.
haven't seen the 5th, the January 5th yet.
Okay. So you want to take a minute to run through those?
Yeah, are you guys not gonna look at it?
We can.
You don't usually look at them?
Oh, I do. But
Oh,
we don't
okay.
have, she emailed them later this afternoon, didn't she? Or maybe, the 5th, that was that. Yeah.
Mhm.
If I mute you from here, will that stop the feedback? See how you're,
No, that's redundant. Audience if you're Select-Board.
all right, well, I know Mr. Fairman said there's an echo.
There is echoes as well.
Yep.
If there's only one microphone.
I don't know.
Okay, I'm good.
All right, good. So
Did you already
it's been
move? I have it here.
moved, yeah,
I second.
and seconded to approve the minutes of January 5th and 13th. And
The sound is terrible. I didn't get any of that. Nothing.
All right, time out. We got some sound. They're not able to hear on the other
Yeah,
end.
I heard nothing.
Look at Alyssa. Alyssa, can you hear? Is it the mask?
No, there's feedback going back to them.
Yeah, it's cutting
I
out.
don't think it's any of,
I heard nothing of that motion for the warrants. Or minutes, I mean.
so are we muted in here now?
Karen, why don't you activate your mic and see if you come through without an echo?
All right, it's activated now.
So ask Alyssa how it is now. Alyssa, is that any better?
Alyssa, can you hear me?
She cannot hear us.
Doesn't appear that she can hear us.
All right, let me,
So I'm
not sure why
tempted
this is
to.
happening.
You can't hear.
No, I'm good. I got my hair. Look at Joshua, what are my hearing aids?
I know, but I can't talk
This
loud.
speaks for her.
Suddenly they'll.
You can tell him first.
How's that? I'm trying this stuff.
Can you hear us now, Alyssa? Yes. Okay. Good.
All right,
All right. So we have. Did we vote on the minutes? I think
No.
Not yet.
we didn't.
No,
Okay.
not yet.
So it was moved and seconded, and if there was no further discussion, then all those in favor?
Aye.
All right. So next, motion to approve the warrants.
Yep, motion to approve and execute the warrants to the treasurer
On completion of review.
upon completion of review. Thank you.
Seconded.
Sorry.
You know, it does really make sense. So it's been moved and seconded to approve and execute the warrants to the treasurer upon completion of review. It does make a lot more sense, and I think you pointed this out, and we've just never done it this way. So now let's talk about the warrants, and then we'll vote,
Okay.
right? Makes more
Perfect.
sense.
Perfect.
Okay, so you want to walk us through them, Karen?
I will. So payroll warrant dated January 29th, 2021 in the amount of $19,839.43.
I just had questions about, I'm sure they're just people I haven't heard of before. Jason Newton and Leonard Howard, they have
Highway Department.
their highway department. Are they like managerial positions or?
No, they had overtime because of the storm.
Ah, okay,
So it's a bi-weekly cycle.
got it.
Yes,
Okay. And the same with Alan Thurber then, I see?
Mm-hmm.
that is correct. And Adam Fletcher as well.
Okay. So I'm good with that one.
Okay. And then-
Okay. Yep.
Then we have accounts payable dated January 16th through January 29, 2021, in the amount of $201,878.77.
And the air cleaning is the fire department? That's the exhaust system, the 98,000?
Yes, it is, David.
Okay, all right.
Is that an annual figure?
No,
No.
that's one time.
That's a new exhausting system that
Oh,
we
it
just
wasn't
put in.
actually cleaning. It was
No.
actually an installation of a system?
Correct.
Correct.
Good, because I was like, that's a lot of money to clean
Gonna
that.
go into the cleaning business, huh?
Uh-huh,
Yeah.
okay.
And the community bank is the payment on the sidewalk, correct? The
That is
28,000.
correct.
Right, okay.
And then the Putney Community Cares, I'm confused about
That's-
that amount.
That's two Group A social service payments because
For this year.
Putney Community
Oh,
Cares,
because
because Putney Cares
The two
and,
together.
exactly.
Okay, yeah.
Um,
And then the Youth Services of Wyndham, I mean, I think it's great, but what is that?
That's a social agency appropriation as well.
It's one of the ones that we've looked at?
Tier B.
Okay.
Yes, so
Okay.
these are the remaining payments to go
Okay.
out to the agencies.
Okay.
And then Noe Carl was radio work.
Radios for the fire department.
Okay.
And I know you've told me this before, but VEMR's is what?
FEMR's is our Vermont Municipal Employees Retirement System.
Okay. And then VNH?
That is another social agency that we do appropriate money to.
What is
Vermont, New
One
Hampshire
out
nursing.
nursing.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Great. Thank you. I'm good with those.
And Green Mountain Power is $2,387. That's a month.
Where are we seeing that, David?
Oh, about
Third of the way down.
10th down. Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Any news on the fire station?
We've been kind of busy in the office,
You
so.
think? Really?
Yeah, a little bit. And we will revisit that with Tom.
Okay.
I'm not sure where he's at. I knew he was gonna talk to Green Mountain Power.
Yeah.
And we just saw their last bill and, it's creeping up there. So we'll figure it out.
Yep. Okay.
I'm good.
There's just, it probably doesn't matter, but there's a typo, Cold Flame Mechanical is Cold Family Mechanical. Cold Flame in the vendor number and then the vendor name.
Yeah, we'll just correct that.
If it's a one-time night, it doesn't matter, but just so you know it's in there.
It's probably always been in there like that.
Might be,
Right, Alyssa?
could be. All right, so we have reviewed the warrants, and it has been moved and seconded to approve them. Is there any further discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. Okay, so next is public comment on items not on the agenda. Are there any members of the public who would like to make a comment about something not on the agenda?
Mr. Chairman,
That's Howard.
It looks like he's trying. We can't hear it.
All right, so we can't hear them now.
Hold on, Howard. Mr. Fannin.
Mr. Fairman, we're having sound problems on our side.
thank you. I know. I can hear it too. I'll wait.
Alyssa, can you try saying something to us just to see whether we're working?
See, I'm getting an echo in my.
Unmute yourself and say something. Oh, maybe she's not hearing us now. Oh.
Also, Mike, there is the tree copy.
Yeah,
Can the camera be moved over so that we can see Vera?
maybe.
So I don't understand why it's.
Josh, can you hear me?
I can tell you
Yes.
if you want to. if you want to do it, I can tell you when it looks different.
It's-
That's good.
yeah, that's
Yep,
good.
That's perfect.
Just enough.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Are you Austin?
Yeah.
Hi.
All right, so Mr. Fairman, did you have a comment on items not on the agenda, Mr. Fairman?
Yes, please, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we can hear you now, so now go
Can you
ahead.
turn that up at all?
Thank you. Vermont statutes and the Vermont League of Cities and Towns leave no doubt that every Town of Putney Reserve Fund must first be duly established by Town of Putney voters. Quoting the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, check the town or special meeting minutes to see if a record of the voters creating the fund exists. If no such record exists, neither does the fund. Contradicting recent public discussions, as soon as Town of Putney voters have duly established a Town of Putney Reserve Fund, it therefore exists and Town of Putney taxpayers' money can be duly deposited therein. Members of our Town of Putney Select Board, you can and should add articles to the warning of our 2021 Putney Town meeting, asking Town of Putney voters to duly establish Town of Putney Reserve Funds. I suggest a single Town of Putney Reserve Fund so that the consolidated balance can be expended as needed for any authorized purpose. Quoting the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, a reserve fund allows the Select Board to roll over money that is placed in the fund and not spent from year to year. This is contrary to the general rule of budgeting under Vermont law, which is that money not spent in a budget year must be reallocated the following year as part of the budget approval process at town meeting. Now, Monday, January 25th, 2021, I asked via email our Putney Town Manager and Finance Director to tell me the names and current balances of every existing Town of Putney Reserve Fund and the dates of the annual or special town meeting minutes recording Town of Putney voters votes to establish each. Having received no reply, I now ask our Putney Town Manager and Finance Director to tell us.
I don't know. I'm guessing that she has all intention of telling us, but may not have had the opportunity to go back to track those things down in past minutes yet, but I will ask her to respond.
I will respond, Mr. Fairman. I did get your email. I did send you an attachment. You couldn't open it. And then that was late on Friday afternoon, and then Monday morning I resent that. I also got your request for the reserve funds and the minutes that you requested. And I realize open meeting law too, if we can at that time and it's available, we can send it right off. This was a request that our entire office was busy. And I took your email, I sent it to the town clerk because he's the keeper of the minutes. And I also sent it to my administrative assistant. And I do believe they sent you some information.
Okay, so
Mr. Chairman.
yes, Mr. Fairman, go ahead.
Our town manager and finance director has not actually answered the questions. By the way, she referred earlier to something she sent me twice. That was the town meeting warrant. That has nothing to do with this discussion. Once again, I repeat my question. Please tell me the names and current balances of every existing Town of Putney Reserve Fund. That's question number one. Question number two is, please tell me the dates of the annual or special Putney Town meeting minutes recording Town of Putney voters' votes to establish each. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because if we do not have this documentation, the reserve funds do not exist per the Vermont League of Cities and Towns and Vermont statutes.
Right.
So, Mr. Fairman, I don't have that information in front of me.
So
You've had 2 days to come up with it.
And I also have 7 days to get you that according to open meeting and public records requests.
So we'll work.
Public records request, it is establishing whether, in fact, these reserve funds you talk about have actually been legally established. And it appears that you are not able to answer the question. So here we are. We're going to be talking a bit later in this meeting about reserve funds, and yet there is substantial doubt, and that is, putting it mildly, that in fact any reserve funds have been legally established.
So
They have.
Legally established.
They-
do not exist.
They have, Mr. Fairman, the sidewalk maintenance reserve fund and the roof reserve fund were both created in 2018 while Chip Stearns was here. I don't have information
They're
on,
voted by voters at town meeting.
yes,
that
they
is
were.
correct.
Yeah.
And it's in the minutes. It's,
Okay, and the dates were?
Jonathan, I know you're on. Can you answer Mr. Fairman's questions? Because I know you have the answers.
Sure. The roof and the sidewalk were approved on March 7th, 2017, as Articles 15 and 16. And then the capital reserve fund was approved March 7, 1989 as Article 23. And then there was one that was approved last year.
That was the blasting.
The blasting, yeah, the blasting reserve fund was approved March. Sorry about that. I lost the page. March 3rd, 2020 as Article 9 at last year's town meeting.
Now, of course, I was present at last year's town meeting. I'm familiar with that one. The others, were there specific articles asking the voters to approve the establishment of reserve funds?
Yes, there were.
Howard, I'm gonna email you the notes from those, the articles, and then the minutes from those meetings, if you want. I have it scanned in my computer.
Yes, please do. This is your usual excellent work. I'm simply raising these matters this evening to create a public record. I shall be continuing to look at the question of Town of Putney reserve funds and at the money that is deposited therein, because it seems that on the one hand, we could not bond for a fire truck because we needed to take care of Town of Putney voters during, Town of Putney taxpayers during this pandemic. But I'm really wondering whether we have done anything for them. It seems like what we're doing is squirreling their money away instead of using it to reduce their taxes. And that is simply a rhetorical question. I know at this point you want to get your budget article out, but I shall be advocating that Town of Putney voters look very carefully at the budget before they vote to approve it.
So, Mr. Fairman, I would just say that the goal we have, as you know, is to increase the stability of our town finances. So I think that what we're doing is not squirreling money away and not returning it to people's tax. Well, we aren't returning it to people's taxes, and we could use the term squirreling away. I guess I would say more appropriate terminology might be that we are placing it in reserve funds for the purpose of future purchases of equipment so that we don't have to borrow money in the future when interest rates are higher and therefore increasing the tax burden on taxpayers. So that would be my response. And I think that I totally appreciate the interest you have in this and the homework you do on it. But I also, it feels a little bit like accusations being thrown around that are not exactly portraying what we're trying to achieve. And I think you know that. So I guess I am a little frustrated with that. So, and while I'm on that topic, I guess I will comment also that I've been a little frustrated with some of the emails that have been going back and forth and the nature of the discussion of people about warrants being warned, not warned, things that are ending up in the articles. You have to remember, we're a small town, we're sparsely staffed. We, the three of us as select board members, are all but volunteers. we're all trying to do our best to help this town move forward in reasonable, solid, legal ways. We are not interested in doing illegal things to try and take warnings off or other things.
Thank you.
You know, we're just trying to do our job, and you guys voted us in, and if you don't want us to do it the way we're doing it, then you should run or find somebody else who wants to run and vote somebody else in, because we try our hardest, and it's not an easy task. So I just got to get that out there, because it gets a little frustrating. So,
Thank you, Josh. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman. However, we are in a public arena where public comments, which may or may not please you, are in fact to be welcome. I have not accused anyone of illegal activity. I have simply pointed out what the law states, and therefore I'm suggesting that we may need to pay closer attention to it.
well,
And
yeah,
we should be doing so.
That's
no,
not
and
exactly
that's all good, Mr. Fairman, and I wasn't saying you were accusing. There have been some emails going around that have been implying that there were going to be legal matters that were related to how we were managing things. And I just, yes, of course, we all need to keep track of the legalities. I think in your case, Mr. Fairman, I was referring to a casual misinterpretation of what we were trying to do, or, that's my feeling about it. But I was referring more broadly to conversation that seems to be part of the norm of sort of how public talks about things these days, where they get a piece of information and they run with it when it hasn't been verified by anybody. And that's very frustrating when we're trying to do our job as best we can. And I agree with you 100% that this open public forum is the place to have these conversations. But when there's back channel conversations going on about people who are trying to, bury this or do that, it's just, again,
It's exhausting.
it's exhausting and it's frustrating because it's essentially trying to, or feels like it's trying to point out character flaws
Exactly.
that we don't happen to have.
Right.
And if people feel we do, like I said, get your name on the ballot. Petitions, it might be too late for that this year, but do it in the future, because if you want to do it differently, step right up. So, sorry if I'm acting overly emotional, but like Barrett said, it's exhausting.
It is exhausting.
I've indicated my respect for you and the other members of the board. I realized that recently I have complimented the other members, and I was thinking today that I should mention to you that I admire how you chair a meeting, because it is exemplary. You have the ability to chair a meeting as if it were a conversation, and there are not many people who can do that. And clearly you have mastered it. Now you have alluded to a series to emails that are going around, apparently being critical of the way town affairs are managed. This is the first I have heard of those emails, and I'm not a participant in that.
I fully understand that.
I cannot really comment.
Yeah, no, and just to be clear, Mr. Fairman, the only thing I'm pointing out in your case is that I think the terminology used of squirreling away
Yeah.
felt a little unfair, and I understand you didn't mean it in a vindictive way, and I'm very appreciative of your participation, and you are always, almost without exception, very respectful in how you enter meetings, etc. And I very much appreciate that in return. And I'm not asking for compliments on doing this. I think it's some other stuff that's been going around, which, I guess since I brought it up, it's public comment. But Gino, I don't know whether you want to comment. There was something about saying that they thought that an article had been removed. Jane Katz asked about articles that hadn't been placed on. There are a number of different things that feel accusatory in ways that we've been managing things, and I just want to be perfectly clear. We're doing the best we can, and we are doing everything by the books. It's a very complicated year. We are depending on the town clerk and the Secretary of State to consistently supply us with information. as to the best way to do this. And as we receive this information, we are trying to take the appropriate steps. It's not easy when people are poking stuff at us from the side, so.
Well, Mr. Chairman, you have my full support in everything that you have said. And what I have to say to people who are discussing town affairs behind the scenes is, have the courage to come to an open meeting and speak your mind there. That is what the arena is for.
Great.
Thank you. All right, so I don't know whether anybody else wants to comment or feels they need to comment on this. If not, we can move on. But Gino, I don't know whether you feel you need to say anything.
I heard my name, and I didn't know that we had gotten that far down the agenda. Were we discussing that the two particular articles? I didn't think so. What exactly? I heard a discussion between Howard and you guys, and I didn't follow too closely.
Okay, we don't need to repeat it. We'll just move on. I was saying, Gino, that I'm a little frustrated that there have been insinuations of how things were having been done and the threat of legal action against the town, et cetera, when that seemed completely unnecessary and inappropriate. And I find that frustrating because we're just trying to do our job.
I think that, part of that might be due to the way that I heard, rumor about what was
keyword rumor
in a special select board meeting, which I didn't know it even happened. But honestly, at this point, I don't feel like I have to threaten anything, and I was, I suppose, just getting a little defensive, to cover all the bases. But at this point, I think you guys are you're doing a great job, and I'm a little inexperienced with town government, and I don't see too many people here. It's always just 8 or 10 people in addition to you all. So my point is that there aren't a whole lot of us who take the proper interest in this, and I'm just in the process. So I'm getting into it. Maybe Howard is an exception. Okay.
Thank you.
Can I make one comment?
Yeah. Yeah, hang on. Mr. Babbitt David wants to make a comment.
I think, and I'm not sure because the truth is I haven't read the emails, but I think this all stemmed from my comments about what's the article, Karen?
14.
14, about when
Climate change.
Bear last meeting made the comment about how it was written, and it was written in a way that felt like we were then obligated to do something, and I made a comment about that I agreed with the heart of it or the intent of it, but that it was pretty open-ended, and I wouldn't agree with it if it obligated taxpayers' money to do something that was open-ended, that I wasn't sure about that. And I didn't word it well, and I was really tired. And then later we talked to council, and it's non-binding, right, Karen?
Correct.
So it's not an issue. And if that started anything, then I'm sorry for that, but I feel like it's my responsibility to make sure that we're not committing ourselves to spending taxpayers' money in a way where it's not clear and where it's going and how it's going to be spent. So that's why I made the comment I did.
Thank you.
Yeah, sounds like we're on the topic now of that.
Well, no, we're not. We have other business we need to
Right.
keep moving to. And then that'll...
Mr. Chairman, point of information.
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
To the gentleman who was speaking, Mr. Panieri, I would mention I'm looking at the draft town meeting warning. Your petition article is there as Article 13.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I just wanted to confirm that, and also because we're in a public meeting for the other people who are present.
Yeah.
That your petition has been accepted and your article is there.
Yeah. No.
The word has been changed, so that's what I expect.
And I think there was some confusion also related to the fact that, we, in putting articles on this, we have the responsibility to do, as David said, essentially our homework to know that it isn't committing us to something that we can't either achieve or shouldn't be responsible for achieving. But we also have the responsibility to make sure that all articles are written in a way that they are legally appropriate for warning on an Australian ballot. So that's what much of our discussion was about. And then it felt like it got interpreted that we were trying to remove articles from the ballot. That was not the intention at all. The intention was to make sure that if these warnings were going to end up on the ballot, because as soon as they've been petitioned by the appropriate number of people, we are legally required to put them on the ballot. We know that. We fully understand that. We also fully understand that we have an obligation to make sure that they are presented in a way that is appropriate both for the voters who are voting on it and for us as a town who are committing ourselves to anything that then gets voted on by the voters. So that's why that conversation occurred, in which we were questioning exactly what had to be on and what didn't. So, but we have lots of other business we need to get through, and the town manager has given us an hour to finish our business.
So, it's going to be a little bit longer than that.
I think it's going to be a little bit more than an hour, but we're going to try and move through it as quickly as we can. But, all right, so next on our agenda is I guess we're just getting into select board items. So Australian ballot system of voting for the 2021 annual town meeting adoption. So we're going to start with a discussion of a date and time for a public informational meeting. I believe we have agreed on 10 o'clock, Saturday, the 27th of February. We will be meeting in a similar platform to what we are right now. It'll be the select board members. I believe that moderator Meg Mott is going to join us.
Yes.
And we will have an open forum, essentially, and I think we'll probably plan to go through the articles as they are presented.
Correct.
But it'll be a Zoom meeting, so anybody out in the public who has access to Zoom, if you don't have access to Zoom and you need it, or you know somebody who does and doesn't have it, please notify us or the town clerk, and we will try and make accommodations. I don't know what that would look like, but we will do our best to help you. But we can have up to 1,000 participants on that platform.
Correct.
And I think that will accommodate what we need, hopefully, without any problems. So, and I think that we will plan to probably take a break or two, and perhaps, I don't think we have a schedule yet from the school group.
Right.
It won't be the supervisory union per se. It would be, I imagine, the Putney representatives to the supervisory union, who we would invite to speak at a specific time, which will also be warned. But otherwise, we will essentially be here on Saturday, the 27th, to answer any and all questions that people have related to the Australian ballot articles as they are presented and as they will show up in the town report.
Josh?
Yes, yes, Eva.
Josh, can't people, or for all the Zoom that I do, a person can also enter by phone?
Yes, that will be possible also. We're going to have to figure out a way sometime. We've been having occasional problems, Eva, with when people call in and then they don't necessarily identify themselves. Because it's a public informational meeting, I mean, anybody is welcome, of course, but we really, I don't know whether it's a requirement, but we would really request that people are identified. So we're trying to figure out, the best system for that.
Every Zoom I've been on, people identify themselves.
Yes, that's true, but occasionally it doesn't. We have to remind people, we just need to figure that out. I mean, if we were to end up with 150 people on a Zoom call, we would like to know who they all are. So we're trying, yes, there will be accommodations for that. We're going to figure out the logistics of it.
Josh?
Hang on one second. Barra's got a question, and then Eileen.
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding, the school board is having their own informational meeting, but they are also going to be available to talk about the 2 articles on
Yes.
our warning, correct?
I believe that is correct.
Yes.
Okay.
They are
Yes.
having a separate informational meeting at a different time,
Correct.
but we will set a specific time in our informational meeting, which we will, if we are otherwise engaged, we will break and move to the school article so that they can be spoken to.
Right.
Okay, thank
So-
you.
So
Aileen?
we need to make a motion now.
Hi,
Okay.
so what I heard you say was that you were gonna have a similar format as tonight. If that's the case, this is a good test, of the audio. I'm still having trouble hearing all of you. I have my sound all the way up, and I'm still having trouble hearing every single one of you. And the result is also whenever anybody else is on the go-to meeting speaks, it's extremely loud. So this, like I just said, it's a good test, but I think it needs a little bit more refinement before you send it out to 1,000 people.
So
Okay,
Eileen,
thank
can
you.
I just ask you, Eileen, for specifics? Are you not hearing a specific person, or are you just not hearing every other word for all of us?
Mr. Chairman?
hang on one sec, Mr. Fairman.
I can't hear Eva at all. I mean, I'm not Eva. I can't hear Vera at all.
Right.
Okay.
Well, you just heard me. That was me. So you did hear me.
I can hear you, like you cut out
It's
very
loud.
often.
Okay. Well, she's saying I cut out.
Oh, well, that may because it's volume goes, I don't know. It also, I have to say, I mean, I don't know whether you can all hear me more. I'm all but yelling because I have a mask on.
Right.
So
And it's hard to project through a mask.
can
so-
we do that thing where we actually go through our, I'm wondering, Austin, can we do the thing where we go through our computers and take the audio that
Oh.
way? Because when we're all at our homes and we go through our computers, I think it works pretty well.
Yeah.
So I could have, like, I always have my headset and I plug it in. And would it be easier for us to have headsets?
If you each had a computer and a headset, it would be crystal clear. Yeah.
Okay. Do you
Okay.
guys do that?
So
Right.
what, yeah, we can,
I think you have to have headsets, because if you don't, it will, all the computers
Oh,
will
feedback.
like make that interference noise,
Okay.
because you're all in one room.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
that's gonna be an issue with my hearing aids. but-
all right, we'll work on that. Thank you for pointing that out, Eileen. Maybe we'll plan on having another select board meeting
Yeah.
in person
With
before
that.
that, so we can try and work out the glitches on that. Mr. Fairman, you had a comment?
Well, I was going to say that I second what Ms. Shute has said, and I'll offer this observation. For people who are in their offices or homes, such as the town clerk and Ms. Mondo and Ms. Shute, the sound is crystal clear. The problem is with the sound in the room where you are, Putney Public Library. And as an old-time sound man, I can see the problem. You've got one microphone sitting out in the middle there, and the sound is echoing around the room. If the people handling the technical side could put a microphone in front of each of you, it should solve the problem.
Okay.
We're getting into the weeds. Those
I-
are this, not that.
Yeah, okay, so, yeah, duly noted. Our BCTV person has pointed out that these microphones are only for the purpose of recording. So we're talking to you through a single screen, but I think what we'll do is we'll try it again with all of us on individual screens, and we'll see how that goes. But we'll try and get this worked out as best as possible before the meeting on the 27th. But thank you all for helping us through that. All right, so,
I had a question.
and it will be, just one more comment. So we talked about, and BCTV will also be
Yes.
present for that informational meeting.
Yes.
So anybody who won't be able to attend, BCTV, if they do their usual, they will have pretty rapid turnover. So in all likelihood, people will have been able to view it before they have to vote on the Australian ballot
wait a
on the
minute, but-
following Tuesday.
Just because, do you realize that the meeting is on Saturday and the town meeting is on Tuesday? Is that going to give you enough time?
They're gonna live stream it too, right, Austin?
She talked before.
I think
Yes.
that's what Core said.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, hi, Cor.
Okay, this is Core. Hi. I'm just tuning in now, and yes, it's going to be live streamed on I forgot what you said, Karen, but it could be Facebook and YouTube if you want, as well as channel 1085.
Great, thank you.
The other thing is, just to respond to some of the issues with the audio, is we're going to definitely be working on that. So we can work more with you on how you want to be configured in the room or at home so that the audio experience is better.
Thank you.
all right, good. Okay, so that covers everything for item A?
No, you need to
We can make
vote.
a motion.
Oh, yeah, okay. So I would entertain a motion to, well, go ahead.
Okay, I'll make a motion to authorize the select board to adopt an Australian ballot system of voting for the March 2nd, 2021 annual town meeting.
Seconded.
Did everybody hear that? I'll repeat it. So it has been moved to authorize the select board to adopt an Australian ballot system of voting for the March 2nd, 2021 annual town meeting. That was moved by David Babbitt, seconded by Barra McNeil. Do we have any further discussion? Doesn't seem so. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you.
Want me
Okay,
to do the next one?
yes, so let me just comment on it first. So our next select board item is a question of whether the town clerk shall mail absentee ballot to each voter in the town of Putney. I'm not sure why it says adoption there. Adoption of this. Yes.
Right.
So it has been recommended, I believe, and John, I don't know whether you want to comment on this, but it has been recommended now by the Secretary of State's office that ballots are mailed to each voter. Is that correct?
Yes, both the Secretary of State's office and Governor Scott have both recommended select boards adopt that practice to prevent the spread of COVID. I would request one little modification. Currently, there are 1,960 some voters in Putney. 178 of those have been challenged. That is that the Board of Civil Authority and or the clerk's office believe that they've moved away. And most of those are due to the fact that when the state of Vermont mailed ballots for the general election, those ballots could not be forwarded. So they came back to my office. And so when we got returned mail, as those ballots are undeliverable, we challenged those voters. So to the extent that we're going to mail ballots, and I'm happy to do it, I would request that it be limited to active, not challenged voters.
Okay, so we'll just add that
No,
language
it's
to
in
that
the-
motion.
It's in the motion already.
Right, active.
Yeah.
Why don't we just clarify not
It says
challenged?
each active legal voter. You want it to say each active legal non-challenged voter?
I think active voters.
Active legal voters enough?
Yeah.
Okay,
Sounds good.
If that's what the motion says, that's fine with me.
okay.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I just
Thank
want
you,
to
John.
clarify why I requested that modification.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
I never thought about something that came up here. I'd like to ask our town clerk a question, if I may.
As long as it's relevant, which I'm guessing it is, sure, go ahead.
Mr. Town Clerk, when you refer to active voters, I'm wondering exactly what you mean by that, because yes, I quite understand that if the mail came back, these people probably are not Putney voters anymore. But does an active voter include people who have not voted recently but are still eligible to vote?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Challenged voters are just ones that the Board of Civil Authority has reason to believe have no longer live in the town of Putney. And that list is compiled in a biannual meeting with the Board of Civil Authority. It's also compiled when ballots are returned to me. It's also, if we get a change of address form, if somebody sells their house in Putney and lists a different address on the property transfer tax return, we challenge those people. But once somebody's challenged, I can't remove them from the checklist until they've missed 2 general elections under Vermont law. So they're still there, but everybody knows that they don't live in Putney.
So I would also just say, I know this platform doesn't reach a huge number of people, but I'm just saying right now, if you are a voter in Putney, and when will you plan on sending those out, John?
I'm going to send the ballot to the printer tomorrow, pending finalization of the warning in your meeting tonight. I've already written the ballot. It needs to go to the printer and come back. By law, early voting in a local election starts 20 days before the election. I believe that's February 10. We're intending to send those out. And due to, there's going to be an insert in the ballot suggesting that people return them in our secure drop box as opposed to mailing them back.
Okay, so I would just say, if anybody who is a voter in Putney and does not receive a absentee ballot by roughly the 15th of February, you should feel free to contact the town clerk to notify them if you feel like you should have.
On the 10th.
Sounds good. All right, so motion.
I move to authorize the select board to charge the town clerk to mail absentee ballots to each active legal voter in the town of Putney.
And I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to authorize the select board to charge the town clerk to mail absentee ballots to each active legal voter in the town of Putney. Is there any discussion? John, could you just quickly comment so we know it's not fully relevant, but I think it is of interest to this topic. There is some financial support for you to do this. Is that correct?
Correct. There's going to be money available from the Secretary of State's office to reimburse for COVID-related election expenses. It's the mailing itself will be less than $1,000. And we'll find the money, but there's $2 million that the Secretary of State's office has available to towns to seek reimbursement.
Sounds good. Thank you. All right. So if there is no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Good. So next item on our agenda is the Highway Department budget review and approval. We have been over this several times.
Right.
I think we are all pretty confident, but I'll open the floor to Karen to comment on whether she wants to point anything out to us before we move to adopt it.
So we have been over it quite a few times. I am comfortable at this point, and given the articles, our goal is, and we spoke about moving away from borrowing.
Right.
And with the surplus that we do have in the highway department, we will be able to purchase, if the voters approve, the loader, not to exceed $163,000, and also create a capital reserve fund within the highway, and with $5,000 of that surplus. So that's a total of $168,000 of surplus, which will leave 11% in unrestricted for emergencies in the highway budget.
What, can I ask what that 11%, what the number is? I'm sure it's right here somewhere. I thought maybe you'd have it off the top of your head.
Yeah, I do have it.
Page
Hold on.
120, 186?
It's about 120, I think, David.
Yeah, it's 120, 186, 48.
There you
I
go.
got it.
You got it?
Yep.
It's on
Thank
that
you.
sheet. Yep.
Okay.
You guys good?
That's about, no, actually, let me correct it because I want to be accurate.
Okay.
So it would leave $106,067.
Okay.
Okay?
Sounds
So
good.
I'm very confused because at a meeting, I don't remember if it was the last meeting or a special meeting, I specifically asked, I thought Brian, because we were saying we were gonna actually ask the voters to allow us to borrow money to get the loader.
Right.
Because my understanding was that when Brian said he wanted to buy it outright, he was assuming that he would use up the surplus and there would no longer be the 12% that we want as a buffer. So this sounds like, why is it not phrased as borrowing but as purchasing from the surplus?
Because we want to move away from short-term borrowing so we don't have to pay the interest. And this $163,000 is coming directly out of the surplus.
So.
Is there, after this $163,000, if we do outright buy it from surplus, is there still going to be 12%
Yes.
of a buffer?
11.
11%.
So we have roughly $275,000 in surplus.
Right.
That and as we've talked about in previous meetings, that surplus is not freed up until June 30th of the previous year. So that full 273 or whatever it is all money that was as an audited surplus from the 1920 budget year.
Correct.
So, so you're right. We did talk about that, and I'm not 100% clear on what the shift in thinking as to why we decided to change that. If Karen wants to mention that, but we did know that this was a possibility before. We just talked about doing it differently.
Right.
So before you go, I just, because maybe there's nothing to explain, if I can just see if I understand this.
Right.
When we had that discussion, the statement was that if Brian used the $163,000 to buy a loader outright, he would not be leaving the 12% that we want in the reserve. But now that's different.
He's leaving 11.
Right.
So
11%. So it's a little bit less than 12.
yeah.
Yeah.
Can you, I know that you're talking to Karen, so you're looking at Karen, but you need to look at the TV because we can't hear you when you're looking at Karen.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can't hear anything you're saying, not a word.
Wow.
So you just heard me.
Not much.
I don't know what to tell you.
Can we get that closer?
Yeah.
Maybe the
Can
laptop.
Can we move it up?
Just the laptop come closer, or does it?
Listen, maybe you should sit here and I'll sit there because you'll be closer because I have a louder voice than you.
Or you could move. Well, yeah.
Can we just move the laptop to the center more, Austin? Is that possible, like on a chair?
Or direct it to Barra a little bit more.
We didn't have this problem last time.
You want to bring it right over?
Move it, maybe direct it towards Barra a little bit if you can.
Alyssa, is that any better?
Not a ton.
You are rather muffled. It's just.
I got special masks. I asked my husband.
Later from yelling.
I asked my husband get special masks because I was muted at the last meeting.
Right. Right.
So sorry guys. My question is, can you hear me at all, anybody, or should I just not even try?
I can repeat it.
That's better.
Okay. My question is that at some point we had a discussion about that if Brian were to buy a loader with the surplus at $163,000, my understanding from somebody's answer was that if he did that, we would not have the surplus that we want in the reserve fund for future problems, potential problems. So now what I'm hearing is It's just that we only have 1%, we have 11% instead of 12%.
Correct.
I don't understand why an 11% would have made us decide that we wanted to borrow instead of, and as opposed to a 12% would make us want to borrow. Like, why 1% would make that big a difference?
I don't think it really does. I think we
It
were
doesn't.
I think we were exploring different
We
options.
were.
I mean, the last time we talked about it, in fact, you're right. The way it was worded was that we would borrow, there was something about saying we would borrow up to 163 and use
Or-
money from the surplus or exactly.
Or use the surplus.
So why
So-
are we not, because we want to get away from borrowing, so we don't even want to have that on the table?
No, we don't, and we have the surplus to buy it. So
Okay.
that's part of the reason, and what we're trying to do, Vera, is we have these gaps right now in the highway department when it comes to replacing equipment. And we can take advantage of moving away from borrowing right now. And it's gonna take a little while. It'll take 1 to 2 years before we can level off. It's gonna be a gradual climb. But once we get there, we won't be borrowing that money. We won't be paying the extra interest.
I understand that.
Right.
And asking the taxpayers doesn't obligate us to actually buy the loader.
Right.
We're just being transparent. We're putting it out there
Yeah.
so that we're letting them know that this is something that we might do. So we're asking how they feel about it.
And
Yeah.
I guess I just want to make sure, because we discussed asking the voters to allow us
Approve
to
borrowing.
actually borrow.
Yes.
By not asking the voters if we can borrow, that cuts off an option.
Yes.
So I'm wondering why we don't have both in here, and with the understanding that we don't want to borrow, but we have that as the option. I'm just not clear why we're doing that.
But we have that option anyway, don't we?
What?
To borrow if we need to with the highway department.
You do, as,
We
yes.
actually do.
Yes, you do.
Not in that volume, I would, but we don't want to do that anyway.
Okay.
In the
We don't.
interest of
Right.
We don't.
transparency, I think
Right.
I totally agree with where you're coming from. Shift in thinking.
Okay.
And I think that, that's sort of why we defer to recommendations from the
Right.
finance director to say, part of it also, from my perspective, is that we now have a completed audit. So we know that
The highway
surplus
budget
that we
is
have
good.
is an audited surplus that we know we
Right.
have.
Okay.
Right.
And we knew that was likely, but it was a draft before.
Correct.
And so we're confirming that in fact that money is there. We do have, because it's 273,000, we can do this and still have 11%. So I think it's, as you pointed out, why would 11 or 12? It
Right.
wouldn't. We just, now that it's clear that it's 11 and we know we have it, then let's go ahead and do it that way.
Okay.
And it's very clear in my eyes, and I've spoken to Brian more than once, and
And this is how Brian had been
it is. And-
projecting that he would like to proceed with this. So it's
Correct.
also, I think, partly that of saying,
Right.
okay, well, he's, in conjunction with working with Karen on it, this is what Brian preferred, and now I think we're verifying that in fact that's a reasonable way to do it, and so let's go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want a motion or are we still talking about
I
it?
think did we have the motion?
Not on
No,
this
okay,
one.
so go ahead. Yes,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
yes, Mr. Fairman.
first, I want to compliment you all once again. I'm listening to excellently prudent financial management. Second, because we're discussing the highway budget, I just wanted to mention that throughout this winter, sidewalk maintenance in Putney Village has been excellent. I'm in a position to know, as you probably know. Third, I have a question, perhaps to be directed to our town manager and finance director. You're looking at funding the highway department with about $148,000 in estimated revenues. Could you please characterize the source, the principal sources of these revenues?
Oh, yes, the revenues are coming from, state aid to highways, Howard?
Yes, I'm looking at I'm actually looking at the town meeting article where it says to fund $850,000 with taxes and $148,000 by estimated revenues.
Yes.
If you could characterize what sort of revenues we're talking about?
So they're intergovernmental grants. There's some departmental revenue that comes in, like Westminster sends money for snow plowing, one of their roads in Westminster. There's Brookline reimbursement. There's overweight permits too that we collect revenue on. The Edwald Fund too is a trust that we end up with some money, and that's about it. But the biggest part of that is the state aid to highways, Mr. Fairman, and history shows that we tend to be a little under budget, so we end up with a little more revenue from the state, but because of COVID, we're trying to be conservative, so we'll see what happens.
So, just if you're not looking at a highway budget at the same time, the projected income for budget year FY22 from the intergovernmental grant state aid to highways is $122,000. Last year, the actual was $135,776. So that's a big chunk of that, and the other is smaller sources for various different things.
I don't know if you can see it on the screen, Mr. Howard, Mr. Fairman.
I can.
Okay.
So it's grant money, essentially.
Pretty much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Are we good?
So, where did we get to?
We need to make a
We
motion
still
to
need the motion?
accept the
Yeah,
highway
okay.
budget.
Yep.
So I'll make a motion to authorize the select board to accept the highway budget as presented.
Second the motion.
Let's see, let me just, sorry, I know. Somewhere. Anyway, it's been moved and seconded
Oh, you want the motion?
to, what did I do with it? Sorry.
Maybe it's not.
Want this, Josh?
I know, I'm gonna get rid of the.
Oh, here it is. No, here it is. So it's been moved and seconded to authorize the select board to accept the highway budget as presented. Is there any further discussion?
Can I make a comment?
Yes. Could you take your screensaver off? It doesn't really matter, but not screensaver, screen share.
Hold on there. You're throwing me off. So authorize select board to accept. I did not put approve in there because the voters have to approve.
Approve. So we accept it, and then essentially this is our recommendation for all practical purposes to the voters to approve it. Right. So thank you for clarifying that. All right, it's been moved and seconded. If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so same general conversation related to the general fund. I believe we have been over it several times. Unless anything significant has changed, Darren, if you want to comment.
I do want to comment. Again, I tried to level fund, but that's not the case with the general fund. So taxes that needed to be raised are up $46,223. We also thought we had some surplus monies in the general fund, as we were looking at $202,500 or something like that. Actually, it's $202,822.06. But our assistant treasurer had this nagging question, which she asked the auditor. So every June, we prepay invoices for the next fiscal year. And we did do that, and we had $107,306.28 that were prepaid. So that money technically is not part of that fund balance
For all
surplus.
practical purposes, that comes out of surplus?
It does.
Okay.
So we technically have $95,515.78 in the fund balance, which is, what did I figure it out to be? Hang on. That is only
6%.
6 or 7%, yes.
Okay.
So
So we need-
unfortunately, we're not able to reduce the taxes to be raised like we had talked about in the last meeting, Bara. So I just wanted to bring that up.
So, so that is surplus, it's not a reserve.
Correct.
And are we?
So is there a way for that to be
Yes.
clearer next time?
So,
Yeah.
well,
That's
You have to
hard
be-
because
yeah.
that's very hard because it requires at the end of the audit to see where you are at the beginning of July, not at the end of July of the next year.
Right.
So that's what the audit is for, reading
Right.
through and seeing what you really actually have for monies because of the prepayment, monies from 21 being used for 22 or that as an example.
Right.
And then that's a question that I had, and we talked about this, and Alyssa talked about this. She tried her hardest to explain it to me.
But it does highlight the fact that until you have the final audit in hand,
Yes.
it's always, I'm always surprised by this because,
Yes.
managers appropriately sort of say, well, I think we're here, but we don't have the audit back yet.
Right.
And then you find sometimes things like this where it all makes sense as far as how you think about it, but the reality of how it's audited shifts that equation just enough to make it a little different than you think.
Right.
So,
Okay, so last time, we thought that there was gonna be an increase in the taxes to cover around 41,000, is that right?
It was 40, it was
correct.
48.
46.
It was 46,
Or was-
48.
Well-
There was, one was 40,000, one was
Right.
41,000, one was
45,
45,000. Which
yeah.
one was which? Do you remember?
I know.
Doesn't matter. I mean, we started out at 33,000 and we're now up to like
48.
46.
So I'm
Yeah.
trying to understand what happened, and,
So what happened was,
so can I just ask a clarifying question?
sure.
So that if you say the stuff that it's not actually gonna answer the question I have. So at the last meeting, we thought the taxes were gonna have to be raised a certain amount, around $40,000. We thought we had excess surplus
right,
of around $40,000.
correct.
Because, and so we decided we were gonna just take half of that surplus,
Yes,
put it into a reserve fund if possible, and take the other half and lower the debt, the tax burden on the residents.
correct.
Because
Yes.
we don't have that excess surplus, we are not gonna be able to put any of that money into a reserve fund, and we're not gonna be able to lower the tax burden for the residents.
Correct.
So the tax burden is now gonna be an increase of, what's the number?
Roughly 1% or 1 cent.
2 cents.
2 cents. 2
on it.
cents.
Exactly.
2 cents per 100
1,000.
or whatever
It's,
that is.
it's $20 on every $100,000 worth of assessment.
Okay.
Right.
That's
So-
the real value. It took a while to figure that for
Okay.
me, but
But we are still, if Article 9 passes, we are still putting 96,000,
Yes.
that remaining 96,000 into a reserve fund.
Right.
That's the amount that we actually have in surplus after the prepayments. Is that correct?
So it'll be the
After the-
96 plus the 95.
Oh, so that's what I was trying to figure out. Is that the
Yes.
same figure? No, it's 2 figures. Okay.
Yes.
So what's the 95? What is that figure?
The $95,515 is the amount of money that is left after we take the prepaids
Okay.
of $107,306 out of our total fund balance of $202,000 $822.
So would you say that 95,000 is the surplus after the prepayments? Is that how you would say it?
It is unrestricted
Okay.
in the general fund in case of emergencies.
So then what is this sum? Okay, this sum is from the sidewalk that we want to also put in.
Yes.
We want to,
It's
so
separate.
we want to put that into a
Right.
general
Okay.
capital
Yeah, yeah.
fund capital reserve.
Correct.
What the 95,000 that is surplus?
Yes.
What is that? What is that? Is that staying where it is, or is it going somewhere?
No, that'll stay in the
Okay.
general fund,
Okay,
just in case, something
and that's
happens.
that's
It just-
much lower than our goal eventually, as Ron said, to have. That's the number that we would ideally want it to be, $250,000 to $340,000. Is that right?
Correct.
Hang on one second.
Like-
We're getting feedback. Can you mute John? I think it's John. He's the only other one that's on. There we go.
Sorry,
Try
I
that.
wasn't paying attention.
So, sorry
So-
to interrupt.
No,
Yeah.
I think we got it. right?
Yes, you're right on.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, but in the general fund, correct me if I'm wrong, we can't then, that surplus, then we can't continuously float that from year over year. Is that correct? At a certain point, it becomes money that has to go. It can't remain as a surplus carrying over. Is that
Well,
correct?
we have to decide. Now, Ron said we should have like 25%.
Right.
So,
And that should be, that 25% should be unrestricted?
yes.
Yes.
Yeah, for
Okay.
emergencies.
So-
Yes.
But that has to be in a reserve fund of some kind, doesn't it?
Not necessarily,
Oh, I thought he
because,
said it did.
As long as we use that money and allocate that money the next year for something, then
Right.
it doesn't
Well,
have to be.
Each year.
Right.
So it depends
Right,
on how, it
exactly.
has to do with the audit and how it's accounted as much as it does
right,
the money. Because
Okay.
I think of money very differently than the way a municipality thinks of money. And
right.
it has been a great
Yeah.
education.
Yes,
I
yes.
tell you. So I'm sure that money will get used the next year.
I
And
see,
then there'll
okay.
be monies from the year before that will then
I
be surplus.
see.
And
Okay.
or, right, exactly.
Okay.
And or we will take that money and move it into a surplus.
Correct.
Into a reserve fund.
Correct. Or
Exactly.
the voters.
Which is part of the
We
articles here
will
right now.
propose that the
Right.
voters vote.
Yes, at
Exactly.
an annual meeting.
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Karen. Is that the only change that you wanted to point out for the general fund?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so, motion?
Barry, you want to do this one?
I move to authorize the select board to accept the general fund budget as presented.
And it's seconded.
It's been moved and seconded to authorize the select board to accept the general fund budget as presented. Is there any discussion? Not seeing anybody go green on the screen and not having anything from the tables here. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay, so next on our
What do I
agenda,
have on here? Oh, social agency appropriation.
what? We're not there yet, are we?
Yeah, we just.
Oh, social, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, social
there was
agency
one other thing.
appropriation tier A recommendation.
That's right, yeah.
So in your packet, you have the social service agency contributions. Group A, Tier A.
Hold on, where is
Yep.
it?
It's here. I
What does
saw
it look like?
I
Oh,
saw
I see
it
it. I
somewhere.
got
It
it.
looks different than the
Yeah,
others.
okay, I got it. It's this one.
Yes.
So I want to just remind the board that we've been talking about,
The issue of having
Yes.
two that go to the same
So-
place, which is that what you
Yeah,
were
right.
referring to.
Right.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Karen.
So in the allocation appropriation for 22, we are showing 3 organizations in the top tier, not 4 like in the previous 2 or 3 years. And that is because we know that Putney Community Cares did merge with Putney Family Services.
Okay, but this does not follow the intent of that, which was the intent when we agreed to it initially was that we would figure out a way to fund Putney Community Cares to effectively get the funding of 2 organizations.
Do you have that in writing?
It's definitely reflected in minutes. I'm sure.
So can I speak to that?
Yes, go ahead.
So in the minutes, I do believe that it was, we would leave them as 2, and we would charge the equity, and well, the first year it was, we would rewrite the policy to better reflect, what we wanted it to reflect. And then another year went by and it was not done. And then it was charged to the Equity and Inclusion Committee to rewrite the policies so that we could get a definitive answer, and that still wasn't done. So now it's been 2 years where they have been getting 2 shares when they're really one company.
I don't remember this one.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
that's-
I don't remember
The
this one.
intent was definitely for them to continue to get the equivalent of 2 tier A things.
Okay, so
So
if that's the case, we can.
we just divide that 22, not
Right.
26 by 4 and reallocate.
Right, because this allocation does not affect the budget.
Got it. It's
Right,
just how it's
I see what
divided.
you're saying.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but I just want to be clear.
So
when
we should
you-
have that so we can clarify that for
Yes.
people again.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, this highlights once again, and of course, it's just a reality of one more thing that has to be done. It highlights that we need to clarify that and have a mechanism by which we can do it.
Yes.
Because I agree with you, they are one organization, but that was part of their whole presentation to the board, was that one of the reasons they had considered not merging the 2 was because of the concern that then that would reduce the funding from the town by half, which was an undue burden they felt. So, given the services they provide, the intent was to maintain it at twice as much as the others. So,
So we need
And
to
just to
revise
make
our
big-
policy.
we need to, which is,
To make it clear, it doesn't reduce it by half, it reduces it by less than that because you're taking them from 11 to 7. Because it's divided by 3 it's 55, instead of 2 shares of 5,500, you get 1 of 76. So
right.
it
yes.
doesn't cut it in
And the
half, but
others get more.
it does cut it. I just
And-
wanted to make that clear.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And we can definitely, we can revisit that with them. But that was the intent 2 years ago.
no argument.
Or 3 years ago.
We-
I'm
Do
not-
we have a mechanism by which to judge how, we don't
No.
really.
That's the
Because I
problem.
remember the meeting now, and I remember the presentations, and we
Yeah.
were talking about how the food shelf was working overtime and yet getting lots of contributions with money because they weren't taking food. I remember the meeting, but I came away from it thinking I have no means way to judge this.
Right.
I don't.
Can I get clarifying, redundant? Were you finished with that?
Yes.
A clarifying question, Karen. I think I remember this accurately. Group A gets a certain percentage, no matter how many are in that group. And then the number of groups, okay, there it is. Thank
Yep,
you.
it's on the bottom.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. So we really need to rewrite the policy because this is obviously not happening.
Well, they are the one that, as it's written on here, that's totally correct.
Right.
But that whole, and we should go back and find those minutes, because
Right.
the intent was very clear that
Okay.
they should be receiving twice as
Yeah,
much.
because it was like 2 years ago, I believe.
Yeah, 3, it may have been 3 now, but it reflected
Right.
2 years ago.
Right.
But yeah, so we should just,
So I just want to,
and maybe we need to, we partly need to revamp this to a certain degree, but also we maybe need to have that conversation with Putney Community Cares again and say, are you still providing the equivalent of 2 services?
Right.
Right.
Or
Exactly.
what's the,
So
I have a
6,
comment.
14, 11.
Tell me when you're ready.
So if you divide it by 4, it's $5,731.50.
yeah,
And then if you take 2 payments for Putney Community Cares, Putney Family Services, it's $11,463.
Yep.
And I will remind the board that the Equity Inclusion Committee was charged to look through the policy. And then, because I know they were talking too about other potential organizations. So,
I'm not sure, and I agree with you, I'm
Right.
not sure whether we asked them to specifically look at that aspect of it too. Because again, in the discussion, and we could ask, I remember very clearly that Maggie Cassidy was part of that conversation. I can't remember who else, but you know, they would have recollections of their, we need to find the minutes from that and figure out what.
and I think our goal is to be fair and equitable.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that is the goal.
Yeah.
And we still obviously need to work on it a little more.
Yeah.
We will find the minutes, Alyssa or John.
So can I just make a?
Yes.
As you know, I'm in a temporary position here. When town meeting happens, somebody else is going to be voted in. I've been noticing at the meetings that there are oftentimes something comes up that's like, we need to get to that. I'm going to offer that if somebody can keep a list of those things that the town manager shouldn't have to follow up on, or that I could be a sort of at-large person who could follow up on those things. And, you know, like keep a list, okay, we need to revise this policy. Maybe I'll take a look at it and make some suggestions, and then you guys don't have to do that.
That'd be great. And, you know, the other people we maybe spoke to about.
Something's happening over here. We can hear you, Austin.
It's a 4 or 5 second delay because of broadcasting. You have to do that.
It's like I'm hearing myself.
I know,
Like,
it's that, so I had to
That
take
doesn't
these
happen to you all
out.
the time. It happens to you all the time.
I just don't tell other people. But we had, for example, a few years ago, you may or may not remember, a tax exempt committee to explore the implications of all the tax exempt properties. And, you know, those folks combined with, I mean,
Right.
honestly, Barra would be perfect to be part of a committee
Yeah.
like that. And maybe we just need to actually task a committee.
Yep.
And the people who were on
Right.
the tax exempt committee would be well suited for that, and Barra would be well suited for that, to revisit this and think about the nature of it.
Well,
so I
our,
just wanted to say in general, because this is one
Yeah,
example of many.
right.
So if somebody could sort of keep, because I'm not going to probably watch every single board meeting once I'm not on the board, sorry.
Right.
Keep a list
What
of
kind
what
of
you might
volunteer
like
are
me to
you?
follow up on, and get in touch that I'm available for that, okay?
Great, thank you. Man,
We have
we have it on tape.
yeah,
There you go.
and we have a list going already, Vera.
Okay.
And
No, and honestly, I mean, again, somebody like yourself would be well suited to take a look at that list and say, you know what, I'm not going to be great at this or this, but I'm happy to take this one on,
Right,
and that's
right.
what we
Yep.
often sort of try to do.
another thing too is every year after town meeting, this board should be looking at the policies
Yes.
as a refresher and then looking to see which ones
What
should
needs
be
to be
updated.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I've got Jonathan working on a little project. He has the whole, you know, the notebook with all the policies.
Yeah.
And there are policies in there that go back to like 1977.
Yes, you and I talked about that in relation
Yes.
to a couple of other things.
Yep.
So, yeah, so maybe Jonathan and I can talk if he wants some help with moving forward with some of those things.
Yeah, and Jonathan has a legal background, so he's, you know, he'll be perfect for this task.
Okay.
So,
that's good. Good. Thank you, Barra.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
just a suggestion regarding the excellent discussion about follow-up items. That's what old business is for on an agenda.
Yes.
You could have both old and new business.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. In fact, we used to do that.
Everything is old business.
Yeah. The problem was that after quite a while, this was, I don't know, the last time we had it on the agenda was, I would say probably 6 or 7 years ago. There's a lot of them that are so hard to resolve that list just gets longer and longer. And you're right. they should be cleaned up and dealt with. So, but yes, it's a valid point. Thank you. And we have done that before. But sometimes it just makes the daunting task of getting through a meeting even that much more daunting. So,
Yeah, speaking of that, I think we're past our hour.
yeah,
aren't
it's just barely.
Slightly.
All right, so surplus amount clarification. So as you said,
Right.
Karen,
General
this
fund,
as it's presented does not affect the budget, so
Correct.
it's not irrelevant, but it's
Right.
not necessarily relevant to our passing.
Yeah, from the last meeting, I wanted to clarify the
Yeah.
general fund balance.
Okay,
Yeah, we did that.
surplus amount clarification, so we're good on that, I think, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, and so, did we vote yet on the general fund?
Yes.
We did.
Okay. Okay, so motion 5, did
We haven't talked about this. We talked about the sidewalk a little, didn't we, Karen?
Yes, where's my agenda? Here we go. So sidewalk construction loan payment decision to pay loan debt 1 year early.
So we just had in our warning sidewalk payment. That was not the one that was the 2021, not the 2021 one, is that right? Something like
Correct.
that.
Correct. So in our accounts payable warrant,
Mm-hmm.
it was due in February.
28,000 something.
Right, for this year
Yeah.
that we're in. So we have another one for 22.
Okay,
So that's the one that the select board has the authority to go ahead and pay that debt off 1 year early. And
Right.
because it's within the sidewalk construction reserve fund
right,
for landmark
Got it.
phase 2 and 3.
okay.
And you're using it to pay off the borrowed debt that built that sidewalk.
Okay, and then as related to Article 9, the 96,981 would be the remaining balance after this is paid, is that
Right.
correct?
That, and there's also an article
An
before
reallocation.
for
proposed.
$20,000
Right.
to go into the sidewalk
Yep.
maintenance fund.
Okay,
So I just have a clarification question.
Sure.
Do we want to move this first, or should I talk about it first?
you can move it.
Okay, I'll move it. I move to authorize the select board to pay from the sidewalk construction reserve fund, phase 2 and 3, approximately $27,486.74 of indebtedness to construct the sidewalk.
And I'll second that.
Okay.
I love that it says approximately and then it's a
Yeah.
really exact figure.
So it's been moved and seconded to authorize the select board to pay from the sidewalk construction reserve fund, phase 2 and 3, approximately $27,486.74 sorry, of indebtedness to construct the sidewalk. So discussion.
So Karen, the reason that you're hoping to do this a year early is to make the payment ahead of time.
Why would we do it early?
Yeah.
So because one, it's paid off, it's gone. And second, what it does, it allows us to repurpose the money because in that one reserve.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 or 3, what it'll do is,
Three.
and 3,
2A.
what it will do is that payment is already in the highway budget.
Which
So
payment?
it'll create surplus in the
It
highway
will
budget.
create surplus in the highway department.
Which payment?
So that
This
could be
payment?
used to feed the reserve
This
fund.
payment
Yes.
Got
is already proposed to be paid in the highway budget that we just
So
recommended.
instead of paying from the highway budget, this will be from the general fund? Because isn't this in the
No.
general fund?
No, this
No.
is it. Well,
I thought that all the
it's a
sidewalk was in
reserve
the-
fund within the general fund. You're right.
Right.
Okay,
Yes.
so I'm confused.
But it's a reserve fund.
So I'm confused. You're saying that if we pay from the general fund, I mean, why would it have been coming out of the reserve fund if it was for sidewalk?
So
I mean, out of the highway fund.
So we have phase 2, phase 3, sidewalk construction reserve. It's been there since the start maybe of the project for building the
In which
sidewalk.
fund, general or highway?
It's in a reserve
It's
fund.
in its
Separate.
own fund.
It's not a part of either of the
No,
fund. Oh,
no.
okay.
Well,
No,
it's not in the I thought it was a reserve fund within the general fund, isn't it?
no, it's so,
Okay.
no, you're
Sorry.
thinking of the other one.
Oh, okay.
So
Sidewalk.
we
Yeah.
have a sidewalk
Yeah,
maintenance
okay.
reserve
Sorry.
fund.
Sorry.
Yeah,
In
we
the
did this
general
last meeting,
fund.
right?
Yes.
Yes.
But the sidewalk construction reserve fund is not related to highway or general. It's not within
It's not
highway
accounted
or
for
general.
in either
No,
of those.
it's in its own separate account,
Oh,
just like sitting out there with about $145,000 in it.
okay.
And so by paying off
I see.
what was borrowed, the one last payment,
Yeah.
we paid off 1 year early. We end up with about $28,000 in surplus in the highway fund because that's where it was being paid out of.
But we can't really call that surplus yet because that's projected for next year.
We won't
So,
know.
right,
We won't
exactly.
even know.
Yeah.
So,
So I don't know if it's important for me to understand this. So I'm gonna ask this question and you can tell me if it's important. What you're saying is that the indebtedness to construct the sidewalk was going to be paid by the highway fund?
yes, it's in the long-term debt in the capital.
In the highway fund.
Correct.
Okay, so and I don't understand why that is, since we have this reserve fund specifically for this. But for some reason, it was going to come out of the highway fund. And now we're saying if we pay it instead of out of the highway fund, out of this reserve fund, that will free up the money from the highway fund. That's what you're saying?
It will in a year's time, yes.
So
Right.
is there an easy answer to why was it coming out of the highway fund if we have this very specific reserve fund that seems like it should have been paying it?
Oh, here comes our assistant treasurer.
Okay, good. There you go.
Okay, Alyssa.
It's a It's a journal entry.
So the sidewalk reserve fund was money that was intended to build the sidewalk along with the borrowed money. It wasn't needed, so now it's there, so why wouldn't we use it to pay for the loan?
Josh,
So
What was the loan
the
for?
important point is it's the difference between cash in hand and a loan that was taken out. So a certain amount of money we had allocated in this sidewalk reserve fund.
And Landmark
And
gave
then-
us money,
and
right?
Landmark,
Exactly.
yeah.
So
This
this is essentially instead of this isn't accurate, but just for me, instead of the town paying it, the
Right.
Landmark money's paying it.
Well,
It's
This-
money
Partially.
from Landmark, yes.
I mean, I know it's not. I know
The
financially that's
reserve-
not exactly right,
the
but that's a
reserve
sort of instead
fund.
of from the highway fund, which is sort of town money, it's coming from the reserve fund, which is paid from.
Correct.
That's a
So
reasonable way to think
Yes,
of it. Yeah.
yes.
Let's do it.
Okay. Sounds good. So, and
Yes.
part of it also is,
Grant
the
money.
goal here is to eliminate the phase 2, phase 3,
Yes.
because
Right.
we're gonna move, we're
It's
hopefully gonna
over.
ask the voters
It's
to
over.
move some of this.
Right.
We're gonna spend some of it, and we're also gonna ask the voters to put 20 of it into the reserve fund that already exists for sidewalk maintenance. Then we won't have this fund anymore, and then we won't have to have these
Yes.
conversations.
So I just want to say to Alyssa and Karen, good eyes to
Yes.
see that this is a good move. Thank
Yep.
you.
All right. So,
okay.
it was moved and seconded to authorize the select board to pay from the sidewalk construction reserve fund approximately $27,486.74 of indebtedness to construct the sidewalk. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I just, because it didn't come up, I want to comment also that 27,486, if you look at the warrant we just paid, the number was 28,702. I believe that if we waited till next year, it would be a payment of 28,702. So we are also saving.
I was going to ask if we're saving any interest.
Roughly
Yes.
$1,300 in
Right.
interest.
Okay, great.
And that number is valid as of today.
Right. It
So-
shifts a little.
It will
Yeah.
shift a little bit,
Well,
but
that's the
So-
reason it says approximately.
One more question. So this motion we just made does that mean that you can now write the check, or does this have to go through the
No.
town?
No, we
Okay.
can write the check and
Great.
pay the loan.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Is that, we don't need voter authorization for this because we're
No.
paying off debt related to it.
Yeah, it was for the
Okay.
same purpose.
Okay, so,
Did you vote?
yes, we did. It was
Approved.
unanimous.
Okay. Do you want me to tell you I found the minutes relating to the social service agencies?
Good job, Alyssa.
Good job.
Sure.
Do you want me to read them?
If you want to give us a brief, and I don't think we need to go too far into it again, but if you want to tell us what was said at that time.
Yeah.
It was just a few sentences. First, on November 20th, we discussed it and said, well, we're going to have to look at that and think about it. And then on January 29th of 2020, it says there are 4 organizations in Group A, Putney Cares and Putney Family Services, merged last year. The Select Board will leave the appropriations as is per the commitment they made last year. The process for allocating will need to be looked at as a whole in the future to determine the appropriations are being fairly divided among the agencies that serve Putney residents. It has been requested that the Equity and Inclusion Committee look into how the agencies help, who they help, and what other avenues of funding they are able to acquire. Following their study, we may need to revise the policy, make a policy change the way appropriations are granted. So that was a year ago.
So we'll also ultimately want to look back to the decision that was agreed to the year before that.
Right.
But we
right.
don't need to worry about that right this moment. But thank you, that was helpful. So again, it follows the intent that we would be double funding it, at least that was the initial, exactly. And we recognized, when we decided on it, we recognized that this would become a problem.
Yeah,
So
right.
once you had, once the select board member who was sitting at that meeting was no longer here, nobody would know why we were double funding
Right,
it. So,
right.
all right. Town warning article review and approval. So, we've been over now a number of the things related to this, including, how do we want to do this? Do we want
Can
to
you take questions on any of them?
Yeah, we can take questions on any of them.
Let
And
me
I
put
want
them
to
up.
I want to point out, let's see, a couple things just related to, excuse me, particularly Mr. Fairman, to your point, Article 6 is asking to create or establish a reserve fund. So this would be that authorization that you've been referring to for each of these funds needing. This would be the new one that would be the Highway Capital Reserve Fund. And then also, we would be asking to take $20,000 from the Phase 2 and 3 Sidewalk Construction Fund, this is Article 8, and move it into the already previously established reserve fund. And then Article 9 would be authorizing moving the other $98,000 to the general fund capital reserve fund, which
It's already established.
is already established.
Right.
Correct. So there's several things related to reserve funds here. But sorry, I didn't mean to jump into it. I just wanted to highlight those to start with. So,
Mr. Chairman?
yes, Mr. Fairman.
Okay, since you brought it up, Article 6. For those who are, since we're in a public meeting, I'll just mention it says to create the a reserve fund called Highway Capital Reserve Fund. I'll skip over some of it here. And authorize, the voters are being asked to authorize the transfer of $5,000 from the fiscal year 2019-2020 Highway Fund surplus to fund the Highway Capital Fund Reserve Fund. Now, the purpose of a reserve fund is to hold unexpended surpluses, because otherwise they can't be rolled over from year to year. They have to be reallocated. So why is it only $5,000 that is being the boards are being asked to authorize to deposit in this fund to create it.
Because it's to establish the fund by
Right.
voter approval, as you said. And my understanding, and Karen will correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that that inability to roll over from year to over year does not apply to a highway fund, a highway surplus. Is that correct, Karen?
I'm not sure on that, Josh.
Okay. I
But
think in a highway budget, you can carry surplus year to year. I'm pretty sure.
yes, you can, because what's in the highway budget stays
in the highway budget.
in the budget for that purpose.
Right.
So you're absolutely correct. Mr. Fairman,
I've consulted, Mr. Chairman, I've consulted counsel on this, and I'm not sure this is the answer. Now, I realize that at this point, we are approving the town meeting warning for this year, so it will have to remain moved for now, but I shall be following up on this to ensure that in the future, all of our handling of surpluses and reserve funds is in full accordance with the law.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that any laws have been violated, but I'm saying that as the finance director just said, she wasn't sure. I suspect none of us is sure, and we need to be sure. So that's what I'm going to be working toward. We are absolutely certain about what we're doing.
Yeah. No.
Not for the purpose of this discussion, because I realize that you are under time pressure here.
right.
No, thank you. And I think one of the efforts is to create that capital
Yes.
reserve fund so that we have voter approval for it.
Right.
And then once it's been created, I think we can move, when it's surplus in the future, we can move surplus into it without voter approval, I believe, but I may be incorrect in stating that. Sorry.
I think you're correct about that.
Right, because the select board is authorized within the highway budget to do certain things, including purchasing equipment.
And reallocating, I think
And
we can reallocate
reallocating money,
surplus to
that is
reserve.
correct. And that is part of the reason why Putney, not too long ago, split the general fund and the highway department, because they were at one point before my time
Not long
together.
ago.
There
Yeah.
was one budget.
Yep.
And it's my understanding the money in the highway budget remains in there. It can't be repurposed into the general fund or anything
Correct.
like that.
Yep.
It's specific to highway, whether it's building improvements, roads and bridges, or purchasing or leasing equipment. Mr. Fairman, I believe the next Article 7, $163,000 will be used from the highway surplus fund. So the 5,000, like Josh stated, is to establish that account. And then once we can't project what might be in there for next year until the end of the year and after we've had an audit. But this gives the town the opportunity to again move away from borrowing, utilize the surplus if we're not able to keep rolling it over.
This may not be Mr. Fairman's question, but what I heard was, why is the amount 5,000 and not more? And my understanding is that tell me if this is correct. The 5,000 is just to establish the fund, and then eventually it will increase each year.
Yes.
But for now, the 5,000 is because we don't know what will be available to put in the fund in the coming years. We don't want to put too much in at once, so 5,000 is just kind of a baseline to establish it.
Correct.
That's correct. And the other thing that's important about that is that, because we will still have, as we talked about already, we have roughly 275,000 in surplus. So we will take 173 of that and move it and purchase 163.
Yeah.
And make a purchase, and 5,000 to establish this fund. But once that money is in a highway capital reserve fund, then it is no longer accessible for general use in the highway department.
Right.
So we maintain the additional whatever it is close to
11%.
11%.
11%.
Which then
Unrestricted.
is completely, if we have, the storm of the century
Right.
again, for the
Right.
third time this century, then we're prepared for it. So that's the reason we're not moving more into there, is because once we move into capital, it's a restricted fund. So.
Right.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, I would clarify one point, and that is a reserve fund is to be spent for purposes that are authorized by the voters when they create the fund first. And secondly, if there is some special reason that comes up, there can be a special town meeting where the voters authorize it.
Right.
Correct.
The most important point about reserve funds is all the money the town of Putney has, except for grants and other revenue that were received, all the other money is town of Putney taxpayers' money that they were required to pay to the town of Putney on pain of tax sale. And the town of Putney maintaining it in savings accounts when taxpayers could use the money for other purposes is always questionable unless there is a good reason for it.
Right.
And this is what I'm going to be looking for in the future is what are the actual good reasons for this money being there?
Yes. No, and that's exactly the point that I brought. As we've been having this discussion, I've brought that up a number of times, is that's one of the reasons that we borrow, particularly when rates are low, because then we don't have that question of why we have money sitting around in a fund. So, and it's a darn good question. But the opposite question of why don't we spend it on things while we can is a darn good question too. So,
and it's all part of a bigger. It's all
Yeah.
part of a bigger discussion too that came out about looking at the fiscal health of the town, and this has been a walk, and there's no clear answer of there's definitive one right way to do this, and so this is a good way to do it too, because we'll save money on interest, and the reserve accounts, even though they're specific, could be, as you said, Howard, repurposed if there was a good reason.
If it was necessary.
And having that money there puts us in a better fiscal position in case we do have a catastrophe and need to borrow a large sum of money. We have that there and puts us in a better position to be able to borrow. So it sort of addresses a lot of issues at one time.
And
that's what we're hoping.
I think one other important detail about that is to have that be a reasonable size fund.
Yes.
Because if we had $3 million, for example, sitting around in a fund, then it would be hard to argue that we shouldn't return some of that to the taxpayers. So, where the balancing act is how much to have in and it's of course the same as personal savings. How much do you need in savings? How much do you need in an IRA? And how much do you need, to spend daily? So very much the same equation, just for a different setting. So
I just wanted to clarify. Go ahead.
I just wanted to mention too that the highway department does have a nice surplus.
Absolutely.
And that's because of Brian Harlow's
Yes.
efficiency
Yep.
to manage his budget.
Yep.
And have this surplus, and he's worked very, very hard.
Yep.
To have that amount of money in there, and I think we should all be thankful that he pays attention
Definitely.
to details like that.
It's very good that he knows the difference between need and want and is very
Right.
frugal. And
Right.
thank you for that, Brian.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
No, and honestly, a little bit of it, and not to diminish what you just said, because I absolutely wholeheartedly agree, a little bit of it is good luck. If we had 3 terrible floods and,
Right.
2 really, really rough winters, we wouldn't have that surplus. So,
Right.
it's a
Yep.
balance of good management
Yep.
and a little bit of good luck. Because surpluses can disappear surprisingly quickly in
yes.
adverse situations.
Yes.
So, but it's always good to plan and try and have a surplus like this in case that happens, and for that we are very grateful.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly, that if Brian pays $163,000 for the loader and the town approves that we put $5,000 into the highway capital reserve fund,
Mhm.
there will still be 11% left
Right.
in surplus.
Correct.
Yes,
That we
Right.
can use for
Thank you.
anything.
At our discretion.
Right.
right.
Okay. So any other things?
So can I ask a question? What's happening again with the school votes? We're gonna have a representative at the informational meeting. And
Correct.
We're just leaving that to them.
They're having their own informational meeting, and they're gonna be there to, or, you know, basically at our informational meeting, we will go through these one by
Yes,
one.
one by
And
one.
when we get to Article 10, we'll either set them aside, 10 and 11, we'll either set them aside until the time
Mhm.
that we're thinking, or somebody will hopefully be there right then and there to go
Right.
through it.
Got it.
But yes, no, these are not articles that any of us are prepared to address.
Educated on in
Right.
any way. That's why I'm asking that.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So I have a request or a thought. Because we had a very lively discussion about Article 13, my guess is that there will be some people and perhaps some counsel, some lawyers, who feel that this article is binding. So I would really like to hear from Larry his
Yeah.
reasoning for saying this is advisory and non-binding. So I wonder if he could write a statement that we could read at the informational meeting
Okay.
to provide
really
that
good idea.
information to people.
And he was
Excellent.
clear about that, correct?
He
Karen?
was very clear about it, yes.
So yeah, just in layperson language as much as possible, you know, so that we can all understand it. His reasoning for stating that
Okay.
opinion. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think asking that question, answering that question, from what I garner from all of our discussions and what I know about us limited personally, we are all in support of this
Absolutely.
concept
Yes.
completely.
Yes.
We want to take our fiduciary responsibility seriously
Right.
and not spend money inappropriately that's not necessary. I think we all would agree that climate change is something we're gonna need to spend money on and that we should be addressing, and we are very interested in taking a proactive approach to this. It just is gonna take significant time and effort to accurately and adequately address those issues as they come before us and not spend money frivolously.
I was absolutely. I felt it was way too general and open-ended. I agree with the heart of it and the intent of it completely, but it was definitely not specific enough for me, and that's because I didn't understand that it wasn't binding and it was
So-
just advisory.
I would like to say that personally, I actually feel like it would be great if the town of Putney did start moving in a direction where we did spend money and did take this personally and seriously. What I would like to suggest is that the Energy Committee, if this article passes, that the Energy Committee then take that as at least some kind of request
Outline.
to outline a plan, make suggestions to the select board, and then that we would then forward them on to the voters to vote on about how that's best done and the time frame and which pieces should be done. Because this article says that we should do it, which is great, and so if the town agrees we should do it, that's wonderful. And then we will need instruction and a plan. So I assume the Energy Committee would be the committee to do that.
Yes, and they have done that for us in the past on numerous, I mean, you know, we've.
Can I speak to that? I'm the chair of the Energy Committee.
Yes, go ahead, Eileen.
The Energy Committee would be glad to take something like that on. Right now, we're concentrating on simply getting the enhanced energy plan together.
Yep.
And we made a conscious effort not to appear political, if that makes any sense.
Yep.
Just to get that particular piece done. But if the town directs us to take that direction, we will certainly do it.
Well, and you probably know this, Eileen, but certainly the Wyndham Regional Commission, I mean, we've done a lot over over my time on the board, we have participated both through SEVCA, Efficiency Vermont, and with Wyndham Regional. We have participated in a lot of active efforts, basically in this same genre. And I'm sure Wyndham Regional has a significant amount of data that could be helpful to you. Morgan, who I don't know if he's active on your committee, but he's certainly, I think he remains on the Energy Committee.
He is,
He's
yes.
well
Yeah,
informed.
he's been very helpful, yes.
He's very well informed about this kind of stuff, and he would know also, or more likely know, more of the history about it. But we've done a lot of work on this, and we should. All I'm saying is that we should try and figure out where that is and hand it over to you, so that you're not recreating some wheels that we've already created in town, and it might be helpful background for you. And of course, the equations have all changed in the last 5 to 10 years, but we've done some of the homework. So
Yes, absolutely. That's great, and thanks for the direction.
Thank you to as one of the authors of this article, I like to say this is exactly the kind of discussion that I was hoping would result. I mean, this is just the beginning, and certainly the Energy Committee is going to be directed to do things that are bolder and maybe perhaps more political. The point is that we wanted to make mitigation of greenhouse gases and adaptation to the effects thereof a defining focus for this town's planning, funding, and action, and not to cause any of you to do things that force you to do things that you feel would be wrong for the people of the town. If I wanted to be more wordy in the declaration, I would have added equity and fairness, a sentence or two about that, because in most other town declarations of this topic, there, it's spelled out. You have to make sure things are done in a fair and equitable manner, especially with regard to people who are not of means, people who, and that seems to be the source of a lot of the doubts and opposition. Wait, is this going to force me to do something I can't afford? Am I going to have to throw out my wood stove? Things like that. So thanks for putting this, thanks for bringing it up one more time, letting us chime in a bit. And it'll be interesting to see everyone at the informational meeting, which I guess is on the 27th, huh? February 27th.
Jane and Gino should be there to speak
Gino, I just
on
wanted
these.
to thank you for bringing this. This is something I personally feel strongly about. My husband and I have done a lot of work on our home to make it efficient, and we actually are saving a lot of money. So I see the importance of this, and I thank you for bringing it to us. And yeah, we just have to figure out how to move forward, thinking about lots of different pieces, but I'm grateful that you did that.
And I think your comment, Gino, about equity and inclusion is really important, because it really crosses so many boundaries of climate problems cross so many boundaries of equity and inclusion, whether it's location of housing in flood zones to food security to heating oil security, et cetera. There's a whole bunch of issues, and I think that those need to be deeply in our thoughts too, and how to also, one of the efforts in the past, for example, was to, through Efficiency Vermont, we actually acted as a loan bypass, so that people could actually borrow money from the town to do weatherization projects at very low interest rates. Things like that are great. And they also allow us to promote them. Of course, those are promoted statewide, but it's also nice when it's a very local thing, and what somebody like yourself can come and say, hey, I got a neighbor who I know would really benefit from this. Can you give me the information we need to do it? it's hugely helpful. So I think that's very important.
My family was actually a beneficiary of that exact kind of low interest loan and revolving loan fund through the town many years ago.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. So this is an opportunity for our town to get ahead of the game. And, we're not reinventing the wheel. We're following some other municipalities, and I'll pass for now. Thank you.
I want to make a comment before you go. I want to thank you for having a big perspective about this. A lot of people can get passionate about something and they put their blinders on and they just see what they want to see right in front of them. And I thank you for having a bigger perspective than that, for seeing all the pieces that you see and the effects, all the effects it could have on everybody. Thank you. It's so much easier to deal with someone with that. Thank you.
All right. Okay.
So
Jane, we're sort of bouncing around here a little bit. I don't know whether you feel the need, Jane, to comment or bring anything up related to Article 12. Again, thank you for your work on this and for bringing it forward. Also, in my opinion, very important. I think it clearly is something that we at a local level can't sort of boots on the ground affect as much as we might want to, but the article as presented gives clear direction to direct others, so that's good.
Yeah, thank you for recognizing it and putting it on the warning. And I feel it directly relates to the town in an important way. So thank you.
Yeah. No, I agree. It does. I mean, it's hard. It's not something we can necessarily wrap our hands around as far as implementation, but we can help promote implementation at the levels where it's important.
Thanks.
We good?
Yep.
Can I do this one? Okay, here we go.
Hold on.
We got it.
I think.
Ready?
Wait. Just wait.
All right. I'm trying to help Karen.
Yes.
I think you're all
Okay,
doing well.
I'll make a motion to authorize the select board to approve and execute the 2021 town warning for town meeting.
I second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the town warning article. Town warning for annual meeting by Australian ballot. I don't know whether that worded that the same way you did, but
Let me see
if there's no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I have one addition. Everybody who's listening, can you hear me, Alyssa? Yes? Okay. Everybody here and everybody who's listening, I'm going to request that you email everybody you know and tell them about the informational meeting, and ask them to email everybody they know and tell them about the informational meeting, so that we can have as much participation as possible in this time of COVID and how things are changing. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll put together the agenda and then we'll get it out, the best we can. Putney, and it'll be on the website with all the information for the, public.
We could also ask, Putney Mutual Aid to
Yes.
send it to their
Yes.
folks and various others.
And there may be a postcard, a mailing that's gonna go out to everyone too, giving them information about.
Well, in fact,
can there
if we're
be-
mailing
Is
ballots,
Jonathan still
yeah.
here?
Right. We
Can
can
you-
put a slip right into the,
Can you ask him to make sure that when he mails the ballots, there's something that specifically tells when the informational meeting is?
yes.
Great.
Yep.
That would be great.
All right. Let's see. So next is RHR Smith and Company CPA's final audit and acceptance. So
So you want me to read this before I sign it, right?
No, I'm
can
gonna,
you read it out loud right now,
Yeah.
please?
I think you're gonna have to speak up.
so my intent was to have you sign off on this, but I would feel more comfortable
Good.
if you looked at it for, a couple weeks and then we can sign off.
And we don't have to, there's no reason, we need to accept it, I believe, there is a deadline, but it's not till much later.
That's right.
It's related, I think it's April 15th or something.
Well,
Tax.
no, it's sooner than that,
Is
but
it? Okay.
it'll be noticed in the town report, which town reports will probably go out hopefully tomorrow. We're hoping to have them back by February 12th, so we can get them mailed out the week of the 15th of February.
Wait, does that relate, I'm sorry, I was sort of somewhere else. Does that relate to this?
Well, it does in a sense,
Just that it
because,
references it.
right, it
Oh.
references it in the town report.
Oh, right, okay.
So, and once you sign off on the acceptance of this audit, then we'll put it on the website, and if people want to request a copy, they can do that.
So when you have read it, you and Alyssa have read this,
Alyssa has been thoroughly through that.
great, thank you
Yeah.
for reading this.
Yeah.
And you feel, before I review it, you feel like it's great and we should accept it and all that?
Not tonight.
Not
no.
tonight, I want your input before I leave here.
No, we're comfortable with it. Alyssa's done a lot of work.
Yeah,
I asked all the questions of the auditor that I needed to ask to be clear on things that I wasn't clear on. And I'm pretty confident and clear that it's good.
Okay, so the next thing is that you would like us to peruse it, like 3 pages a night for as long as it takes to finish it, and then sign something by what date?
February 10th, I'll have it back in front of the board.
February 10th, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
I think the most important parts for you guys to read are the words, like the letter in the beginning is like 5 or 6 pages long,
right.
and that really,
Yeah.
that
Right.
really just explains like what they did and why they're doing it, and then
Recommendations related.
And I read
the
that all,
rest of it, I don't know, but
You may not understand the rest of it.
I read
It's all
that
numbers.
all when we had the first draft.
Right.
Did it change very much?
No,
I
No.
will read it again, but okay.
Right.
Great.
no, and all of
I'm
this
gonna be
stuff
in your
is-
office asking questions about numbers all the time, Alyssa.
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
She has boundaries too.
I'm just kidding.
Mr.
I
Fairman.
I can offer a couple of tips on reading an auditor's report. The first one is look at the opinion.
Yes.
Audit reports first are all pretty much boilerplate. In other words,
Yes.
same text in every report, just the numbers are different. Look at the auditor's opinion, and if it says, I can't quote the exact words, but something to the effect of, in our opinion, the financial statements as presented fairly represent the financial position, et cetera, which we have. That's an unqualified auditor's opinion. And that's the one thing you want to see. You do not want to see, we found that something or something else, that signifies deep trouble, so we're okay there. And the other point is way down near the end, they will talk about deficiencies.
Right.
And this year, they have identified no deficiencies. In previous years, we had several, so there's been some excellent management, financial management, to eliminate all the deficiencies. And once you know those two things, the rest is to be read for pleasure.
Thank you, Mr. Furman.
Yeah, no, I think you're very right. Highlighting deficiencies and particularly, significant material deficiency,
Right.
keywords that are problematic
Right.
that we fortunately don't have. So,
Yeah.
all right, that would bring. So we'll table that for tonight, and we'll look at it at our next
Yes.
meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, so town manager's report. You want to add anything, or are you in pretty good shape?
We're in pretty good shape. I mean, we've been really busy preparing for COVID and town meeting.
Yeah.
But
All right,
third installment is due February 19th.
supervisory union.
No,
No,
Third
taxes.
installment. Oh,
taxes,
yeah,
property
sorry,
taxes. And we're still out right now about $1,460,000 and $1,460,608.47. So of that, 95,000 is payment 1 and 2. So
So that's not bad, really.
Wait,
well, we haven't received the checks from the banks, the mortgage companies.
Mhm.
Right.
So, yeah. We have about 3 weeks to collect the last installment.
So that what she was saying is that 95,000, currently, there's 95,000 that should have been collected during installment 1 and 2 that have
Yes.
not yet been collected.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So, which is not a great number, but not a terrible number.
Yeah,
either.
how does that compare to previous years? Do you know?
It's not a bad number.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
you know, the third payment, we'll start seeing that within the next week. And I believe Alyssa had said that about 800 to 900,000 might be like mortgage companies.
Yeah.
So, you know, we'll see how low we can, you know, get this. The other thing too is utility billing is $13,318, which are unpaid at the moment. But again, that's not terribly
That
bad.
doesn't seem that bad.
No,
Say the number again?
$13,318.
Okay.
Yep. So other than that, I'll have more stuff at the next meeting. Stuff that's been kind of, you know, like broadband update, mileage certificates that, you know, the board will have to sign off on, but.
All right. So do we have any other business?
How about Karen's contract? Are we gonna deal with that? Is that other business?
That's an executive
That's
session.
executive.
All right, good.
So I just have a question about, it seems like we don't need a special meeting next week. We've sort of been having special meetings in between. We don't need one next week.
No, this is, we
This-
met
this
here
is
so
our
I can get you to
specialist.
sign.
Right. So
Yes.
the next scheduled meeting, or should we have it here so we can test our equipment?
Probably not a bad idea.
Right.
Are you okay with that, Karen? Does that make sense for you?
Mhm.
Okay,
Good
so
for
we
you.
will be here the first February.
February 10th,
Yeah, February 10th, okay.
5:30.
And Austin, we're on your schedule for that. Okay, great.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
I just remembered, I was looking at Governor Scott's budget speech.
Yeah.
And he mentioned that because of that huge amount of money they have, over $200 million, they're going to try a number of one-time projects, one of which is $20 million for extending broadband.
I heard about that.
Just a heads up that we make sure that Putney gets some of it to do what we want to do here. And maybe Representative Murwicki can help us with that.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. I heard and noted that also. I'm guessing that money's going to be in high demand and probably, I mean, it is definitely charted for last mile money, but there are unfortunately a significant number of communities that are much less served than we are. So I'm guessing it's going to be pretty competitive, but I think you're right. We should definitely keep our eye on it. And take steps to garner what we can.
Chairman, in that regard, as my mother used to say, if you don't ask for it, you won't get it. So maybe what we should do is ask for it and be hopeful. And well, if we don't, we don't. But you know, it's worth a shot.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you. No, and we often have that sort of discussion related to grant monies in general, which this won't necessarily be, but often that money, it's literally just a matter of asking. And so we hope that may well be the case with some of this, and hopefully we can get some of it. And so, yes, we will definitely do some asking. All right, any other business? I don't see anything there. Okay, executive session. Do you want to enter an executive session or
Yes.
table that?
No, we do. We're doing really good on time.
Compared
Compared to the last few meetings I've been to.
Yeah,
so
but you
we're
can't
only
compare to
we're
those.
at like 50 meetings now. I mean, 50 minutes now. So we have like 10 minutes left in our hour.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's enter. So if somebody would like to make a motion.
Oh, what's the, what?
I don't have the title in front of me. Mr. Fairman, do you have the title to enter executive session for an
Oh, I have
employee
it.
matter?
We have it in one of our
313,
previous ones. Hold on.
19, 313.
I think it
I apologize, I heard my name, but then the sound broke up, so I don't know what was said.
I think we're okay. We're gonna enter executive session, and we didn't have the exact title for the purpose in front of us, but I think
It's 13-3.
313.
Yeah,
Yeah, 313-3A maybe?
I think that's right.
I can
Yeah.
find it in a second if you really need it.
We don't really.
No, we don't really
Okay,
need it.
great.
Then,
So I'll make a
So-
motion to enter executive session under the right article.
For the purpose of,
For the purpose of-
discussion of employee.
Right.
I second the motion.
All right. It's been moved and seconded to enter executive session. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you to all of those of you who attended, and we'll see you hopefully in a couple weeks.